bigger screen and
You can wrap it around your laptop.
this doesn't need to be sitting here.
Sure. Yeah, that's the dog can't chew through it cord. Puppy can't chew it. Although I had to leave Puppy home. She spayed yesterday. So.
A whole lot more plugins around this place. That's what I don't understand.
I sent you guys all just a few minutes ago access to a drive, just pictures of Tickle Creek Trail hazard tree cutting.
The drive, you sent it by email?
It's on Google. You have Gmail?
I have Gmail.
Do you? Oh, okay. One person didn't have Gmail. Maybe it was. Are you Yahoo?
No.
Are you a Yahoo? No.
I'm not a Yahoo, I'm AOL.
Oh, good. You're old school.
A1.
That is really. Okay, so somebody, yeah, it didn't.
It's like AOL, it's like SOL, shit out of luck.
That is definitely like You've Got Mail, kind of that movie.
So
or
you
whatever.
didn't send it to Gmail, you just sent it somewhere?
I sent a link. It's a Google Drive, and it just has pictures on it.
Huh.
So, if it should send you a little email that says, you know, Kathleen Walker shared these photos with you or something, and if you click the link, it takes you to that drive, and you'll be able to look at them.
Okay, so just quickly, we have 4 people that have said they're coming tonight that are interested in the board that hasn't seen anybody yet. I don't know if you want to take a moment to.
Is Dawn coming? Is
I haven't
Lori
heard otherwise.
coming?
Lori is not coming. She's going to watch the video. Dawn has not said he isn't coming.
Oh, that's weird. He's usually timely.
Yeah. So
Responsive.
I don't, you know, if these people kind of drift in, maybe
Yeah.
we could just take a moment and let them introduce themselves.
Certainly. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's that woman I met at the budget meeting up there. named
Yes,
Amber.
So Amber Pritchard, Jesse Hayward, Desiree Rogers, and John Harvey. And all of those except for Desiree have applied
Great.
online.
And so you have a.
And I haven't seen an application from Robert Fisher, who was
Okay.
at the last meeting.
Do you have copies of their applications or?
I do, I can forward
Okay.
that to you.
That'd be good just to
And then,
forward it
you know,
to
if,
the Parks Board to take a look at, but I know
Okay.
there's a process.
yeah.
But just for
I can
everybody to be
definitely,
able
I
to
can
see
do
it.
that. I
Yeah.
think so, I think I can
Okay.
do that.
Let's just give it a couple minutes.
Okay.
Oh, here's Don.
There he is. Okay.
Right on,
So I
exactly
think
on
that's
time.
everybody.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Traffic was a little crazy.
Hi, Don.
Hi.
Great. Hi, Don.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
How are you?
Doing well. I am so excited for my first Sandy Mountain Days. Can't
Do
wait.
you have your chair out?
Nope, not yet.
Well, you better get with the program. You see, it's all, you know, a few spaces left there.
Come to the community center. You can
Yeah.
sit up front with everybody.
And then the question is, do you want to be on the sunny side or the shady side? Because otherwise you're looking into the sun
man.
if you're on this side. We always kind of used to sit for a city hall.
That's kind of where I was aiming for. was
Yeah,
the city
but then
hall.
you're kind of looking into the sun as the sun's setting. So it's kind of, you know, you're squinting a lot unless you bring a nice long shade hat.
Ah,
If you go on the other side, that's the shady side.
the tricks of the trade.
Yep.
I know.
Man,
Mike always saves seats over here, and so every year.
I may not be able to sleep tonight.
Gonna be with the grandkids for the parade?
We will, yeah.
Are they doing any of the kids' events this week?
Well, the kids parade is on
Friday.
Friday.
Yeah.
Do they have to pre-register for that?
No,
Or
you
just show up with
at
a
11:15 is when the entertainment starts. Like
Okay.
Presto the Magician this year.
Presto.
Presto.
So tomorrow's the bike derby. Today was the pet show.
Oh, where was that?
That was down at on the Cedar Ridge grassy area.
Oh.
And the bike derby's on the track down there. I should say Cedar Ridge, the sandy
I
campus.
don't know that we're quite ready for a bike derby yet.
Well, we have kids on trikes,
Yeah, we're
scooters.
Yeah, it's pretty low.
still trying to get that pedal
Okay.
motion down.
Okay.
Balance bike.
Come
He
to the
he
Wagon-
does a balance
They bring
bike.
wagons and
Well, that would
decorate their
work.
wagons
Yeah.
and stuff.
Or you can do the balance bike. That works out pretty well.
Okay, we have a quorum, so let's go ahead and get started. Lori's gonna watch from home. Hi, Lori.
I don't know if she's watching live or if she's
Where's the
watching
camera?
later. Hi there, come on in.
Hi. Hi.
Just visiting. Do I just sit over
Yeah,
there?
sure. Why
Are
don't
you
you sit
Desiree?
closer?
No, I'm Lori.
Lori, okay.
A gardener.
I'll just give you a copy of our agenda.
Okay,
So you're,
thanks.
you haven't applied to be on the board, you're just here for,
Well, no, I have not. I'm not
Okay.
sure if I have enough time, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Alright.
I just
Okay.
wanted to, I can come and watch, right?
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
welcome.
open to the-
Oh,
We're open to the public.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, come in, have a seat.
somewhere.
We'll go ahead and
Sit here
introduce
so you can
ourselves.
see
Okay.
us. Yeah.
And we may, if somebody else comes in, we may do that again, so just give you a fair
Okay.
warning now.
Thanks.
I'm Kathleen Walker, and
I'm Don Robertson.
Mike Weinberg.
And Susan Drew. And I'm Sarah Richardson, I'm the staff liaison.
what was your name?
Oh, Lori Smith, nice to meet all of you and see Susan again.
Yeah, what neighborhood do you live in?
Snowberry.
Oh, great, wonderful.
Yeah, close to the community garden.
Uh-huh.
Yay, community garden.
Yeah, great. Okay. So the agenda that we have is, roll call, Susan, Drew, here, Michael Weinberg,
Here.
Don Robertson,
Here.
Kathleen Walker, here. Okay, any public comments? Lori, do you want to kind of mention anything about concerns you have or anything? We have an opportunity for public comment.
Oh, okay. I don't have it formally written out. I'm concerned about the glyphosate spraying at the different parks. I have a dog and I'll walk my dog, and now I'm avoiding the Bornstead Park because it's not always posted when they're gonna spray. So then, I'll find out, oh, they've sprayed, and I don't want that for my dog, myself, and then I'm concerned about the children who play there. So, and that probably goes for any park. So, in my dream world, they wouldn't be spraying that, but if they continue to, time being that they're doing that it would be posted ahead of time.
You know, that is on the agenda tonight, so
Yes,
you.
you've come to the
you've-
right meeting. That's what
We're being very
talking about
responsive.
Pesticides,
Okay.
herbicides.
If I can interject too, I just spoke with Joe, because he is getting ready to do the perimeter of the dog park, and he is gonna post it 48 hours with signs. And he's doing just the outside. So just so you know, he is posting it 48 hours
Oh.
in advance.
That's the dog park
Yes.
with the off-leash one, which I
Yes.
don't take.
Okay.
I'm talking about the
Bornstead in
Bornstead
particular,
Park.
okay, all right.
And then, Tickle Creek Trail is where I've been taking her. Does that get sprayed ever?
Ever is a strong word, but what we did was we had infestations of blackberries, holly, and things like that. And so during the off-season, it wasn't during the height of the season, we did a noxious weed control
Mhm.
project where we cut noxious weeds and
Mhm.
sprayed the stems to try to get rid of some of them. And it was a fairly low-key project. It wasn't like mass aerial spraying or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if that
It was
could be.
a couple years ago.
Yeah, posted.
Yeah, it was
that would be-
posted at the time that it
Okay.
was done, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so,
Yeah, that's my big parks things, cause now glyphosate is being, the attorney's like, have you been exposed to that? So it's that and other things that are being applied
yeah.
for people, animals, so.
Well, we're gonna be real timely in our response to your concerns, because that's on the agenda tonight about, basically integrated pest management, which includes weeds and, herbicide spraying, so.
Oh, okay.
That was something that kinda came up before, so,
Okay.
good,
Yeah,
good
you
timing.
come to us with a complaint and we're right on top of it.
Well, thank
Good,
you
it'll
all
be
for
interesting.
listening.
Yeah, it'll be good. You don't have any more packets, do you, that?
I don't have, well, actually, I could give, I have one, I don't need mine necessarily. I could give this one, well, actually, Lori's not here either, so we could give Lori's out.
It just has some information that we're gonna be going through regarding
Okay.
some example, integrated, pest management
Yeah,
plans.
Ashland and
So,
Clackamas.
that might be helpful to kinda,
Yeah.
we're gonna be referring to those.
Well, thanks so much.
And you have a community garden plot, so your vegetables could be impacted by spray too.
Oh, yes. Yeah, oh, yeah, cause the perimeter around, did
Well,
you say?
Yeah, because of drift and all that.
Yeah.
And the perimeter, right.
And the soil that was right by where the blackberries were I won't use that soil now, because,
Yeah.
have you all been over there to observe it more, like,
Been there.
Plot number
I've been there not
fifty-something in the
since-
garden
so
itself,
you
but-
know what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I go there every day. and-
Good, so we're gonna get to that.
Susan,
Okay.
I'm going over probably tomorrow or Friday.
Any other concerns? that-
Oh, the
Beside-
public concerns.
Yeah, it was just public comments.
Oh, okay,
So,
and dog poo, but that's a whole different. I know, how do you, when you take your dog and then you see people that don't clean up, and it's like, I don't even know how you even get people, cause they have the bags all
Mhm.
over, and then people, yeah.
You ever say anything to them? I always say, oh, there's a bag, here, let me get you a bag, or here's a bag, the bag's right over there.
Yeah, I don't
kinda call
catch
'em out.
people,
Oh,
usually,
you
it's
catch 'em in
people
the eye,
that,
yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
They do it while, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
so you all have probably
Yeah.
been thinking about that as
And we just
well.
keep putting up dog poop stations and,
Yeah.
you know. It's better than it used to be in some places, but worse in others.
We can tell them we're implementing a DNA dog poop program.
I
and
know.
They're gonna get fined heavily if they leave it behind.
Talking about cameras and some other devious things, but no, we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Well, let's get to the minutes, and we'll, has everybody had a chance to review the minutes?
Oh, yeah.
They seemed all right to me.
There was one or two little things I found. Towards the end.
Are you looking for something?
I was just, there was one comment that I had, oh, I know, it's under 5.3,
Okay.
and it says Parks Master Plan with conceptual parks. So it's developments would come before the board. You know, when there was a conceptual park on the Parks Master Plan, and I don't care how you word this, but those developments would come before the board for input. The other thing that was mentioned in there was that, or if they, the developer wanted to put a park there and there wasn't one planned, that would
Okay,
also
So
come.
when conceptual parks are part of the development, they would come before the board.
Yeah, if it was in the park,
Or
if it was in the Parks
when-
Master Plan,
Right,
you know.
okay.
If it was in the Parks Master Plan, those would come to the park. If there wasn't one in the master plan, but they wanted to put one there, that would come to the board.
Okay.
If there was no park planned there in the master plan and they didn't want to put a park there, nothing came to the board. So that was the only clarification.
I have one
I love this one.
on 5.1. It says, I said that the bylaws are meant to be guidelines, not definitive. I hope I didn't say that, but if I did, I made a mistake, and it should have been that the roles and responsibilities would be more guidelines, not
Okay.
definitive. Bylaws are
Okay.
more of a legal document.
Okay, I'll make those changes. Nothing else?
Any other edits?
No, I move we accept the minutes as modified.
Second?
Second.
Michael moved the minutes be accepted as modified, and Don seconded it. All of those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, vote aye.
Aye.
Any against? Yes. Okay. So, everybody okay with the order of the agenda? Do we want to mix it up a little? Any changes to the agenda? Okay, so let's get in on this integrated pest management plans. I kind of read through the Ashland one and then scanned the Clackamas one. That was pretty long. That was a 50-page, yeah.
Well, I sent, I don't know when we got that,
Yeah.
I sent the whole thing just
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
it's all there if you want to read it. But there's a couple of pages that pertain
exactly.
directly to parks in Appendix 2. And, you know, there's one page in the Ashland one that pertains. So you don't really have to go through the whole thing unless you want, you know, we want to make a comprehensive, if we want Sandy to have a comprehensive plan,
Yeah.
and, you know, that goes beyond parks, we could make that as a recommendation.
Is that something that you would tier to the Clackamas, you know, usually county kind of, cities tier to county plans sometimes, is that?
Well, an easy thing for Sandy to do would be to, unless it wants to develop its own plan, would just be to say, we're gonna follow the Clackamas plan.
Okay.
I think they referred to that in the opening comments also, that with the Clackamas plan, that it was meant to be something that other jurisdictions can pick up and use.
Okay.
And I've read both. I'm a little bit more intimately familiar with the Ashland one, although it's been a few years. But they're really pretty similar.
I noticed there was amendments to the Ashland
Yeah.
plan that looked like probably a good idea. I mean, were you comfortable?
When
with
we
those?
did that, we were much more stringent in the beginning.
Mhm.
And then as we lived with the plan for a little bit, we started finding exceptions that we wanted to make adjustments to. And you gotta bear in mind also that the Park Commission, when they adopted the Ashland plan, they're the legal board. They're the city council
Okay.
of the department there. So they have way more authority than what we have. It was
Mhm.
more along the lines of what the city council has
Sure.
here. And really, it was written pretty tightly and meant to be that way. And to the point of, in the very beginning, basically having to ask permission before we would spray.
Mhm.
And then we'd go out and do a 48-hour, posting and leave those signs up, during the event, and then keep them up for 48 hours afterwards and collect them. And the unfortunate part is, weather forecasting always isn't the most accurate science all the time. And so we would post 48 hours in advance, and it would rain in 2 days, and then we would, search for another window, and we would do these different kinds of things. And so, as a result, we made some modifications in those areas too.
Now, did you, and that was, there was postings for all organic,
Everything.
everything, right?
Yeah, it didn't matter if we were using glyphosate Roundup or crossbow or sluggo out there. We posted. If we found too many slugs in the rose bushes, we'd go out and post it.
Yeah.
And 48 hours later, we'd put a little teaspoon of sluggo out there, and then we'd pick up the sign and leave.
I'm curious, was there any, because there seemed like a real heavy emphasis on the organic,
Very,
non-synthetic.
very strong emphasis on
And so
that.
I'm curious, were those effective at dealing with the blackberries?
No, not dealing with the blackberries at
Yeah.
all.
That's
And
amazing.
marginally effective with some of the other targets. And what we also found was some of them were really heavily citrus-based. And we found more discomfort for the applicators using those.
Mhm.
They had bad reactions. Some had some problems with inhaling the fumes or
Mhm.
burning on, if they got a little bit on their skin, it would burn, kinds of things. So we didn't find consistent or great success with those things. And then we also spent a lot of time and very heavily invested in other means beyond using chemicals as a part of the plan too. We went out and we hired a volunteer coordinator, for instance, as a full-time position for the city, for the department, I mean. And then her job was to, you know, set up all these adopted park programs, adopted bed types of things, and really involve people into it. We established some rules and enforced rules with the community gardens, for instance, that said, okay, if you have a community garden plot, you paid a fee, and you volunteer to manually weed in between all those beds and around all the perimeter spaces and to do those cleanup as a requirement. And we tracked hours and made sure everybody was held accountable for that. And basically what we were doing was asking for more community buy-in to this part of the project too. That it was, you know, difficult. The other thing that we did was spend a lot of time on education, because we were reducing the amount of herbicides and going with other things. It was gonna cost more money, and people would have to be tolerant of weeds. Now, we spent a lot of time, and we got hammered pretty hard from a Portland group, I can't remember the name of them, that were all over us, wanting us to be herbicide free, and their big thing was, you know, you can't be treating broadleaf from the lawns. Well, we hadn't treated broadleaf from the lawns for decades, and I would be shocked if Sandy treats broadleaf from the lawns. Now, at least my observation of looking at the lawns, I can tell you they're not treating broadleaf. But the point was that it became a very volatile and a very active discussion within our community that probably lasted close to a year. And we spent quite a bit of time agonizing and going through it. This was the product of that. It replaced, we already had a pesticide policy in place before that. It was pretty much a one-pager, and it talked about some, you know, general guidelines, but you know, we did make it a much more stringent policy, and the biggest outcome was also the biggest expense, which was going much higher on the staff and volunteer emphasis to counterbalance not being able to use the pesticides as much. And we talk of pesticides in here, we're not talking about herbicides, or we're not talking about insecticides, we're talking about all of it.
Yeah.
You know, so it included the rodicides, it included the fungicides, and all the different things. And then you'll also see some exceptions for the golf course, which we don't have to worry about here, which is a very difficult thing to do without using a lot of herbicides.
What I see as an opportunity is really that preventative design feature that, you know, like at the dog park.
Yeah.
The dog park's all fenced, but I'm putting in, you know, all these a garden yard makeover, and I'm laying down, you know, the thickest landscape fabric I can get where I don't want weeds, and then putting in, you know, cutting holes in to plant something, or, you know, cutting holes in it to put the fence in,
Yeah.
and then backfilling with either rock or bark dust.
Yeah.
And so that's really important.
The thing that we found really effective was going with mowing, what we called mowing strips, and we're gonna refer to them in there, and they're curbs that we put underneath all of our fences. You know, you have a cyclone fence, the grass and weeds start coming up in between it, you can't really weed eat it down because it, you know, breaks the string and one thing or another, so what do? Well, you go out and spray it. You see you know, the telltale signs of that around the community garden, you know, that's out there. So what we ended up doing was, again, it was a big investment. We went in and we installed concrete mow strips all the way around that. So we go mow right up to it and then take a weed eater and just zip it off real quickly without much effort to it and without much time to it. We didn't have to spray.
Okay. Is there a way to just kind of cut back and backfill with gravel, or, you know, landscape
You know, you still get
fabric
a
and
lot
gravel?
of weed that seeds right into that. And even if you know, everybody thinks, oh, we'll put the cloth down, and then we'll put mulch, or we'll put
Gravel.
rock down. Well, pretty soon, start getting a lot of dust and other medium that
Yeah.
falls into that, and then
Yeah.
pretty soon you're,
You got a few weeds
right.
here and there.
So what we found
Yeah.
to be effective and cost effective in the long term was doing the mowing strips.
So
The concrete moisture.
Yeah.
how did that work? Concrete up to the fence or?
Underneath the fence. So if your
Oh,
fence
okay.
was here, we
You
would
have to
pour
reset
a,
the whole fence?
On each
yeah,
side.
we'd remove the
Versus
fabric
fence.
and then pour, and keep the posts there, and then we would put a, frame on both
Oh,
sides and pour
okay.
about a 6-inch strip
Ah,
going to
okay.
that fence line.
Oh,
Yeah.
got it.
And then you
Okay.
put your fabric back up
I
and
see.
problem solved.
There you go, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, that's, a lot of that
That's
was,
long-term, yeah.
we were fortunate to have the ability to do those things.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Sandy necessarily has those same abilities.
Well, at a minimum going forward for new things,
Right,
putting,
that's-
designing that into, is.
Right, and when you
should be
read
best practices.
both ours and you read both of Ashland's, not ours, not
Yeah.
mine, but
Yeah,
Ashland's and Clackamas counties, it talks about design.
yeah,
Yeah.
And that's part of it,
Yeah.
that's a big piece to it.
yeah.
I know other jurisdictions that found it less expensive to remove a lot of ornamental plantings. Because that way they wouldn't have to treat it, that they just replace it with lawn, they'd have to still water it, they'd still mow it.
Mhm.
They would take care of it, but they wouldn't have to weed it, and so their labor costs would drop.
Mhm.
And they wouldn't have to purchase, product to spray it either.
Mhm.
So they'd save some money that way too. But that is not always the most aesthetically pleasing,
Yeah.
and comes with its own set of issues.
Well,
Go ahead.
Oh, I had a question, this was in 2010,
Mhm.
and then revisions went away, but the volunteer, the hired, volunteer, staff volunteer
Mhm.
organizer, has been there for now, like, probably more than 8 or 9 years, right?
Yeah, well, we hired her in, I think, 2011.
Yeah, and so did that kind of build, on itself, like, so once people kind of had this expectation and it was in existence, is that one person still there?
Yeah, she's still
And
there.
Is she still, is it,
Effective?
Did you
no,
increase
is
your
it hard to,
volunteer?
well, is it hard to get people involved, or are people kind of, like you say, once people get educated, and like gardeners would know before they ever got around it, it was gonna include these things, so there wasn't quite so much.
The gardeners had always signed a contract that said they would,
Yeah.
volunteer so many hours. It was never enforced. There was never anybody to do it.
Right.
And
Oh.
so when gardeners would come and say, hey, we want you to get rid of chemicals, okay, here's what it means.
Okay, but you're gonna replace the chemicals.
Okay, but we all need to be accountable
Yeah.
for this.
Right.
Right,
Yeah,
Okay, we understand, we'll do our part, you need to do your part.
right.
right.
And people generally did. There were some people that were, no, because your policy didn't go far enough, so
Oh.
we're not gonna help you. Well, okay, I'll take my basketball and go home, but, it's one of those things that makes it difficult.
Did the amount of volunteers you had for general park projects increase once you hired the volunteer coordinator?
They did, and they increased in the general parks areas,
Yeah.
but what we found was, as part of the benefit was, part of her duties was also documentation of all of our volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one of the things that was really great to be able to do was come back at the budget committee meeting, and
Yeah.
after fighting for that position,
Mhm.
and saying, gee, we're gonna spend an extra $100,000 to create this position, to go back and say, and this is how much volunteer we're
Labor
getting,
that we got,
out of
yeah.
this. And yeah, a lot of it was just better accounting of what already existed,
Yeah.
but a lot of it was new.
Right.
And we were pretty aggressive. We started going to the animal clubs, the elks, the lions,
Mhm.
and talking to them and inviting them to participate in the programs, and they all wanted to adopt a part.
Hmm.
We started going to the garden clubs, who were always very active,
Yeah.
and they all wanted to expand their roles into certain areas. Of course, everybody wanted Lithia Park, everybody wanted to do the high profile areas, so, we spent a lot of time talking about needing to do these other areas, and the high schools had service requirements for their students, and so we would work with them to get the kids out to take
Just
on
takes
different
somebody to
things.
coordinate all that.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
an
it's
enormous
It's
amount of work.
huge, it's a
Yeah.
huge, and there's, it just gets, it gets buy-in, it gets
Right,
support.
and sooner or later, somebody says,
and-
well, let's just find a volunteer to do this. Well, that's not a volunteer's
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, right.
You know, that's,
Yeah, no, it takes,
Yeah.
you know, it's, I used to say, you know, because they'd say, we could, you know, more with less when it comes to volunteers. Like, well, the ultimate to that is, you know, everything with nothing, and that just, you know,
Right.
you know, it doesn't happen, so.
yeah,
You have to kind of invest in the management, and it, you just have more success also to, you
Sure.
know, to make sure things are going well, and that volunteers are lined out safety-wise and all that, so.
So do we have an idea of what kind of recommendation is going to come out of our discussion? What are we shooting towards?
In fact, what would you like to see?
I don't know. I mean, we've got 2 examples of what can be done.
Yeah.
I think the first thing I would like to see is that we recommend that Sandy adopt something,
Uh-huh.
because they don't seem to have anything.
Yeah.
And not having any guidelines is not a good idea, because people then go out and do what they think is right, or do what they think is easiest, and that causes problems. That
Yeah.
causes
Right.
our citizens to not be happy with the parks when stuff is being used in a haphazard way.
I think what would be helpful for me is to know, is to kind of have Joe come to our meeting and talk a little bit about what is the scope of the need. You know, how much chemicals, where, you know, when does he need to use them, where does he need to use them, what does he need to use? You know, and I realize that there's special cases like Tickle Creek, or, you know, Sandy River Park, where we had to do, you know, contract spraying and a lot of things like that, but, you know, there's kind of the special projects aspect of it, and then there's just the ongoing, operations and maintenance, and I'm curious whether or not they're out there using stuff all the time, or just, you know, once in a while when they see a problem, or just what, and so that would help me get a sense for how big of a hammer we need. You know, we may not need a big hammer because we don't have that much use, or gee, I didn't realize we were, you know, spraying everything every, you know, couple of months, who knew, you know? So that's, I guess for me, would be helpful to kind of, before we finalize anything, to know what the problem is, to define the scope of the problem.
have the maintenance people had an opportunity to review these documents at all?
I don't know that they have. I think I really thought we need to have this meeting first, and then I'm certainly happy to forward that to them. And we can certainly invite Joe, I think he'd like to.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that would be a good idea,
Yeah.
because all we've seen, you know, this happened because you discovered something that was happening that shouldn't be happening, but we don't know how common that is and how much that's going on.
And if he's, you know, he's the one implementing the solution, he certainly needs to be the one helping to, you know, develop the solution.
Well, and I think part of it is how does it implement?
Mhm.
You know, and how, is there any type of, reporting back? Is there any kind of accountability associated with it? You know, it's a tough sell. You know, you put yourself in, and I don't know Joe, I've never met Joe, I don't know how long Joe has been here, but I've known 100 Joes over the years. And I can tell you, a lot of these guys are people who've been doing this sometimes for decades. And, you know, this is what they were taught, this is how they do it, this is
Yeah.
what they learned, and this is the best thing, and they've gone to school for these things, and been taught these techniques for years and years. And to suddenly, you know,
Things change.
things change, right, and it's tough, you know, if you have to be an auto mechanic and somebody says you can no longer use a crescent wrench, well, that makes it a little difficult for you.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's one of those things where you need to have a certain amount of buy-off and participation within the maintenance group, within whoever the supervisors are, whether it's the Joes of the world or whomever.
Yeah.
Because without that,
Mhm.
you know, you end up with a policy that's in a folder on a wall
Yeah.
Yeah.
that isn't looked at, used, or dealt with until something bad happens.
How did they handle that in Ashland?
Well, that was different, again, situation where the board was legal and one of the requirements was an annual review. And they set out standards, and the standards were discussed within the document. They say, every year the director, which was me at the time, would have to do a presentation. And we would typically do it, I want to say in February or so. And we'd come in and we would have to identify all the chemicals we used, how much chemical we
You had to have
used.
records of all that stuff.
Well, absolutely,
Which
and
the
there-
Joes of the world are not always,
Well,
you know, they've
actually,
got
they
record
should
keeping.
be, that's state law.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
really?
so, yeah, it should
you
be
spray Roundup or something, you gotta keep track of how much.
for a
Really?
municipality, yeah.
Oh,
And
really?
so,
Oh,
all that stuff should be available, but we spelled it out, we included a copy of, and you see it in there. It's a spray report that happens every time somebody mixes a chemical, you
Right.
fill it out. And so we'd have to go in and we would do a little dog or pony show, we'd bring in slides, we'd say, Lithia Park, we applied pesticides here, 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 and here, and did on these dates, and this is how much we used, et cetera, et cetera. And this is what we learned. And from there, the result of some of those resulted in some of these changes you see. So at the February 28th meeting, for instance, we had done our presentation, 2011, we said, gee, we learned that we would be more helpful if we could do this, or make an adjustment here. And the commission would consider it, and sometimes they would approve it, sometimes they wouldn't. If they approved it, then it was duly noted, attached to the policy. You have a copy of all the changes that were made, and you can see them. For instance, we had softball fields with skinned-in fields at North Mountain Park. And what we,
Softball fields with stinging nettles?
skinned infields, dirt infields.
Oh, okay.
At North Mountain Park.
Uh-huh.
And the high school varsity women's or girls softball team would play on, and the junior varsity. And we got a lot of complaints because we were using, we went with, tried the citrus-based, and it just didn't touch it. And so we, upped our game a little bit, we, would rototill as much as we could, and then we'd have to buy a bunch of new, top dressing and all these different things, and so we came back and said, can we get an exception for the infields and the warning tracks outside by the fences? This was the situation, this is how much we spent, this is everything that we did to make it good. It just wasn't cost effective and wasn't getting the results that the softball team needed. And so we were granted an exception for that one. So those were the things that would come out of that annual report.
But there's a lot of real basic information that everybody could see.
Well,
Like
of
they could
course.
look at what was before, what was applied, what.
Right, but
what was the outcome. I mean,
problem,
we don't have any of that kind of stuff.
we don't know that we,
Well,
we don't know that we
haven't
don't
seen
have it,
We
right.
haven't seen it.
And,
So-
and my point though is,
Yeah.
you can do a document, but unless there's buy-in that they'll
Yeah.
use it, and then some way of reporting back how they're using it,
Right,
and how they're learning and growing from it,
right.
then it really doesn't do a lot of good.
Right.
And so it's one of those things that, other than, we can all feel good and pat ourselves on the back and tell our citizens we've done this. But there needs to be that full circle, not the half circle.
Well, the thing I got excited about was the idea that there would be, like, when there's this row of blackberries somewhere, there would be a discussion somewhere. It might be possible for other people than Joe's staff or whatever to make a decision. There would be other people involved, and they could have that discussion about, we can have some volunteers go and trim that if somebody, if the group really thinks that it's something that really needs to be taken down or taken out or shortened
Yeah.
up or backed up or whatever.
I'd-
Instead of,
Yeah,
no
I'd be willing to
process,
bet.
no process.
I'd be willing to bet that there is that discussion that happens, that happened before that spraying occurred.
But it didn't happen
But it
here.
didn't happen here,
It didn't
it didn't happen
The light of
publicly, but
day.
I'm pretty
Right.
sure it probably happened
Somewhere.
at some shop someplace.
Yeah,
Because
right.
I can tell you, nobody enjoys using these chemicals.
Right, I'm not saying nobody had the
Right.
discussion, just that some of the recipients of the stuff weren't in the process.
Right.
And that's what looked exciting, it'd be, And there would
Sure.
be an opportunity to say that would be a great thing for volunteers to manually do.
Mhm.
Or, we like that there, we don't want it
Right.
turned into death row. You know, it's okay, it looks fine by our standards. Or
Sure.
we will agree to go out there on a regular basis and do something about it, and, you know, things like that.
Sure.
Just sort of
One of the
consider.
things that could kind of draw from that, Susan, is, and again, as part of our Parks Master Plan, you know, a key part of that is looking at the operations and maintenance for each park and what's needed, you know, on a routine, but, you know, what's the general cost for operating and maintaining the individual parks. We need to kind of know that before we start adding more parks, so that we can kind of get a sense for, you know, what's a logical amount, and also where can we be more efficient and things like that. So I think, you know, in doing that, having an operation and maintenance plan for the parks helps identify those volunteer projects that are, you know, like refilling the bark nest, or, you know, whatever kind of, here are the projects that could be volunteer friendly, and then some stuff like mowing the lawns maybe isn't volunteer
Right.
friendly.
Yeah.
And so, but as part of that, then also the whole idea of pest management in this park, you know, what are the needs, what are the options, and, you know, kind of having that little documentation so that as people change and, you know, new staff come in, or we leave, people, you know, there's some sort of documentation as to what is an ongoing problem, and here's how we've kind of decided to try to take care of it, things like that. I personally, you know, wouldn't want to see us, you know, as much as I hate Roundup or Crossbow, I do know that, you know, it is one of the only things that are effective at dealing with blackberries, and but I wanna see it done as part of a, you know, a once and done thing, that we're kind of getting things something else planted, so that we're not back there spraying this all the time. You know, I wouldn't wanna see it taken out of our toolbox
Sure.
completely, but I certainly don't wanna see it used on a routine basis, nor would I wanna ever see it used in sensitive areas like the community garden and things like that.
Well, these two plans, I mean, just on the face of it, you know a lot more about the Ashland plan than I know from reading the page, because you were part of implementing it. But the Ashland plan, I mean, what it says is pretty strict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says no applying pesticides, no spraying in parks from Memorial Day to Labor Day.
Well, they got rid of some of those in
Did
the
they?
amendments.
We lighten that up to where we could go with the organics that were OMRI, I think, certified organics that we were allowed to do. But, you know, that was later on in the process that we made that adjustment. But yeah, we couldn't go out and spray Roundup after Memorial Day. That was just not gonna happen.
Okay.
And,
Whereas the Clackamas plan just has more wording. It's long, you know, instead of just saying no, it says, you know, we gotta look at what we're doing when there's people around, when there's kids around.
yeah,
You've gotta be more restrictive there than we are in other places. But it seems to leave more room for
wiggles.
discretion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of feel like we need to get the scope of the problem and get kind of Joe in here to talk to us a little bit about it before we propose, you know, some either, you know, one or, you know, a kind of a rewrite of the Ashland or adoption of the Clackamas County or anything, so that we can kind of try to know how big of a hammer and what his thoughts are on the whole thing too.
Yeah.
you know.
No, it would be good for him to talk to us.
Yeah.
It would be good for him to read these
Yeah,
over
definitely.
and see what his reaction is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even that could be the beginning of what we have in front of us if we want the council to adopt something like these.
Because, yeah.
And I'll say, you know, again, not met Joe, I can tell you, it's hard. It is really hard to make those adjustments. And I was resistant, and I absolutely hated putting this document together. It was hard, it was emotional for the citizens, it was emotional for the employees to deal with it. It was just a really difficult process.
Well,
But,
yeah, I know.
Pardon?
Well, in retrospect, do you feel
Regret
better
it?
about it?
Do I what?
Do you feel better about it now?
Oh, yeah, it was the right thing to do.
It was just hard to do.
I just hated doing it.
Hard,
You know, I
hard
think
to do, yeah.
also those kind of severe, you know, those restrictions also lead you to look at those more, you know, they're costly in the short term, but like the concrete under the, you know, you
Oh,
would have never
man.
done that with, had you not been faced with restrictions.
Yeah, and I, you know, the first place we did it was at our dog park, and,
Right.
and people loved it, you know.
Yeah.
They went out there and every time we had sprayed before, we would hear about it, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, right.
And if we didn't spray it, we would hear about it. Oh,
Yeah.
it looks terrible out there, you gotta do something about this.
Yeah.
Okay, so we go out
Mhm.
and do our thing there and spray it, and we had some really good, you know, applicators too. These guys,
Yeah.
and men and women both, were really good at what they did.
Hmm.
And I'm sure Joe and his crew are too.
Yeah.
But, you know, then the phone calls would start right back up the next day from the other perspective. You can't do that, this is horrible, blah, 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 I'm never coming back.
Yeah.
And then when we start, you know, doing these other things and putting a little mowing strip underneath it, and it was a win-win for everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Back in the 70s, I became manager of an irrigation district. And a big part of what we did was maintaining 100 miles of canals. And before I came, part of that maintenance was done with 24D and 245T. And I said, being the young environmentalist that I was, I said, that's the end of this stuff. We're gonna use this new stuff that's a lot more environmentally friendly, Roundup.
Yeah.
Because that was,
The solution.
State of the art.
that was
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
state of the art at the time.
Yeah.
Boy, do I feel silly
We used
now,
to- We
looking
used to
back
spray
at
for
that.
that stuff for mosquitoes, and we would all be laying behind the sprayer and.
Oh, yeah.
I used to, yes, I used to run behind a DDT sprayer as a little kid. It's probably why I have the problems I have.
All right, well, so the follow-up on this, Sarah, is that we'd like to get Joe here. The other thing I think I might do is, I think it'd be, you know, Metro does have a plan, and I did promise to do that, although Kate, the natural resource planner that works for Metro, that does a lot of these projects, was in Ireland at the time, so she's just back, and I tried calling her before the meeting, but I didn't get her in touch.
She
So-
lives in Sandy, right?
She lives in Sandy, yeah. So we have some local folks, and she was actually on the technical advisory committee when we did the first Parks Master Plan for this kind of thing.
Right.
So she would be a good person to kind of at least come to the meeting and sit in, you know, and contribute some thoughts on what Metro does, because they're fairly, you know, I don't know if they're as strict as Ashland, because I know they do use the.
They're pretty strict.
They're pretty strict, I don't know if they're, you know, but it, you know, just to,
Yeah.
I know that they do spray on, you know,
Well, certainly.
to you know, in restoration projects
Yeah.
where you're trying to kind of get things done, again, for the long term, you gotta break a few eggs to make the omelet, as we always say, so you gotta, you know, sometimes use those, big hammers, but it's in, you know, but then you turn around and plant and long term, you know.
I think it would also be good if Lori just let the council know that there've been a couple of complaints and that we're looking into this and we're working with Joe and we may have some recommendations to them upcoming. But I don't know that they're even aware that there's a problem. So I
Well,
think it would be good if
yeah.
Lori mentioned it to them.
And you guys send, staff reports, right, to the council every month?
Well, yes, although I haven't, I'm not sure how this took place, but I'll find out, and then I do the rec one. But I can, I mean.
Yeah, they would usually do, I think Nancy would usually write up a little blurb, you know, from the.
But just kind of
yeah.
what's being discussed.
Topics.
You know, kind of synopsis of the meeting notes, and then if they wanted more, she would attach the meeting notes or something. Okay, well, that was good. So I think we'll be following up in the August meeting on this. if you could put the invite out to
Mhm.
Joe and see if he's available,
Okay.
great.
Let's see, August.
What is the August
It'd be
meeting
the
date?
14th, right? Or, let's see.
14th?
Yeah, the 14th is the
Yeah.
second Wednesday.
And I honestly did not look through all the appendices. I was kind of looking at the main plan on the Clackamas County one you sent out. So I will do that, because I did see, in the main plan, there's like, I think bullets 6 and 7 or something kind of mention it, but.
But look at appendix 2 and 3.
Okay, good, I'll do that. Okay. So now, we're on to page 69 of the packet, I think, if anybody's, or the roles and responsibilities, right?
Well, do you wanna do your hazard?
Okay, oh, yeah, that's right, yeah, excuse me, I'm sorry. Okay. Can you bring, can we see anything on a TV?
I do not know how to put that up there. I could, you know, like, I could pull it up on my computer and you could pass it around.
It's not
Can I do that?
Sure, okay, yeah, and, I mean, Dawn, if you wanna come sit over here, I can show you the.
Oh, sure.
I don't know if you, and you could put the other one over there,
Mhm.
that'd be great.
Give me a second, just get in my.
Okay.
Are you putting it up there?
No, she's gonna put a laptop in
Yeah.
front of you.
Oh,
Mm.
okay.
Okay, so Kathleen, so the way it works on mine, I think we have to open this picture.
Possibly.
Oh, no, it'll put.
Okay, all right. So what this topic is about was, you know, it happened a while ago, and I've just kind of been sitting on it, but, as I understand it, you know, this, gosh, how many, you know, it's 6 to 9 months ago,
Yeah.
there was a lot of tree cutting on Tickle Creek Trail. And at the time it happened, I looked up, I kind of asked about it, and they said their arborist had been involved in it, so they didn't really have much more information for me, so I called the arborist just to talk to him about, I was curious about what tree diseases that he was finding and what were the issues that he was seeing. One of the things that did kind of strike me as odd, though, is all the stumps were cut like 3 to 6 feet tall, which seemed just bizarre to me. I was like, what, you know, what, normally, best management practices is you either, you know, I mean, at a minimum, you just usually low cut the stump. In a sensitive visual area, like along a trail or something like that, we typically ground cut the stump and then cover it in, you know, brush and stuff like that, so it's not noticeable. If you're trying to do wildlife habitat, a lot of times you high cut the stump like, you know, it's 20 feet tall. They blast.
So you leave a snag.
You leave a
Yeah.
snag. You can blast it with explosives, you can just go up there and cut it, and things like that. So I was trying to kind of figure out, yeah.
So 3 to 6 feet is kind of a compromise.
Interesting.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them, you know, when you start looking. Now, there's one
It
here with.
prevents vehicles from driving through it.
There's one here with my brother who's 6'5"
Oh, that's your brother.
at least. He's a tall guy, and he's, you know, and it's taller than him, but just barely.
Yeah, right.
So, and
That's a hard cut.
you know, I'm just like, was there a lot of snow out there when they went out there? I mean, we don't think we've had that much snow. Yeah, so, and,
So how did you respond?
well, first of all, I was kind of asking about what was the rationale for cutting them, and he said that a lot of the ones, trees had died, or they were dying, fading crowns or whatever, and he's attributed that to climate change. And so I was like, well,
What is this?
this is the arborist that they had out there,
And
so.
who was that arborist?
I don't remember his name.
Oh.
And, I mean, I can go look it up, but the city folks know. So, but one of the concerns was a lot of the trees that had been cut were cedars. And by and large, cedars are some of your most durable trees. I mean, hemlocks and alder, you know, a lot of trees need to be, you know, let me
But
try.
are cedars dying because of climate change?
Well, you know, it's, you know, things are slowly drying out. I wouldn't say that we have that kind of a situation. I'm not gonna say that what they, you know, I'm not gonna question his decisions. I'm just trying to kind of get a sense for, you know, I do have an experience in hazard tree identification. I've got training in that, that's what I did, you know, for my job. And so I called him and kind of asked him, and at first I think he thought I was just some gal calling up going, you know, kind of a tree hugger, saying, you know, oh, you cut these trees, woo," you know, I mean, and I used to get those people calling me when we had to cut trees in the campgrounds and stuff, so I get that. But I kind of had to explain to him, well, no, I have, you know, more background experience. Yeah, here's why I'm asking, not because, you know, I'm a tree hugger, because I'm not, but because, you know, if it's a hazard tree, it has to go. But for me, I'm usually able to go through and make it, you know, you're usually able to tell when they cut a tree what the hazard was. It's usually fairly obvious. And sometimes there is some, you know, it is pretty obvious. So if you scroll through this, I'm gonna scroll through the pictures real quick. Yeah, that one with my brother, that's just a high stump. Yeah. This is where, you know, you've got, but one of the concerns I have about all this is that, as we've seen, the more we cut, the more blowdown we get. And so it's just an unraveling, it's like a dominoes falling. And so I have a real concern that, you know, if we have a hazard tree, and I know we do have some hazard trees in there, we need to kind of deal with them appropriately. But here's, like, right by the notched stumps with the little fence around it, you know, that's one where, you know, what we have is some brown cubicle butt rot, it's called. I can tell you the Latin name here in a few minutes, but off the top of my head, I don't know what it is. Anyways,
I saw you flipped out of the pictures, Sarah.
Are you able to scroll through them?
No, we
Did
had
you lose
them.
them?
Oh, it just suddenly became your list instead of the, I think.
You touched the
Just
screen.
look back on,
I
just
touched
click
them,
on it again.
my elbow took
I'll go the other ways.
You know, and here's an example where, you know, yeah, we do have some
Yeah.
pencil rot.
That's okay. It may have just timed out too.
And yeah, this was, I think, was an alder,
So-
you know, and so, you know, definitely, I think,
Which one are you on?
well, let's see. So going
Does it
back
have
to
a
the
number?
beginning.
Up in the corner, there's
Yeah, I
a
can tell
number.
you the numbers. So the first one I think we looked at was 001 is the last three numbers on it. You see that? It's just like the top of a stump.
Yeah, 001,
Yeah,
right.
okay. And so then the next one is 015.
Yeah.
And so,
Is
that's
that
an
the
example
best one?
where, you know, I'm not seeing really any rot about that, you know, I don't see anything. And so normally what you do with hazard trees is you bore them with an increment bore
Mhm.
and take it out, and that really tells you how much rot you have in a tree. What's not rotted is called the holding wood. There's standards for how much holding wood you need by the diameter. So, you know, where you have really big trees, you know, they could have a considerable amount of rot in them if they have, you know, based on their species and their diameter, how much holding wood you have. And so you do increment boring all around to determine, you know, well, on this side we have at least 8 inches, you know, things like that. So that's kind of how we, how it's done, is to determine how much holding wood you have to determine whether or not it's a hazard. Now, there's some diseases.
Well, it's a live standing tree.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but so there's some diseases that, you know, it's rotted all the way up through it, and so, you know, it can, you can't tell how rotted it is up there, but, yeah, there's certain conchs that create that, and so it's, you know, when you see those conchs, you're like, yep, that's all just like spaghetti up there, gotta go. So, anyway, and actually we do have one of the most, you know, she's the person that actually teaches hazard tree training, the Forest Service entomologist and insect and disease specialist lives here in Sandy and uses the Tico Creek Trail quite often.
Who's that?
Kristen Chadwick. So, so anyway, I thought, you know, that's a resource that we can use. She's happy to help, she said. So, anyways, just scrolling through those photos, like I said, they're high stumping the things for, I can't tell what reason. My concern is some of the trees didn't appear to be hazard trees. Now, you know, some of them, they've been down for a while. I'm not looking back so much. I noticed some of these trees were not dead completely. So, you know, it's kind of like, it's hard to do an autopsy on things sometimes, but generally, yeah. So I think for me, what I would just like to see is that we have some sort of like the spraying is some sort of kind of a general policy. And for us, what we did is in the Forest Service, you have campgrounds where you have people setting up tents, parking, playing, you know, and all that at a campsite. And so the standard for that is much stricter than what you have when you're walking along a trail. And it's based on basically stationary targets. When you're at a campsite, you know, you're gonna be at that campsite all day long, or, you know, parked, camping, sleeping all night. You know, there's play areas within the campsite and all that. So we usually used 2 tree lengths away from each, you know, if there was a hazard tree, you know, all dead trees are hazard trees if they're within that target area. So, you know, there's no arguing if it's a dead tree, it's a hazard tree. But if there's, you know, then you looked at whether there was disease, there's conchs, sometimes there's root disease, Phillinus wearii, which is a root rot. That can, you know, look like a really healthy tree, but the roots in fact are just nubs, and there's nothing holding it up, and it can blow down at a moment's notice. So there's a lot of that up by, it's called Enola Hill, and there's up by Tollgate Campground and all that. It's also an Indian Henry Campground. So there's different diseases around here, and it's helpful to kind of have an inventory of what those are in a particular area. But here, we do have some brown cubicle butt rot and a couple other things I know. And so, but like I said, the more we cut, the more blowdown we get also. So we want to be careful. The other thing is that there are not necessarily stationary targets here. This is on a trail. Now, it's not like a wilderness trail where, you know, we get more use than, you know, although, you know, I don't think we get as much use as Salmon River Trail, Old Salmon River and Mona Falls, but my point is that, you know, it is still, it's not, people are not standing in one place. The other thing is that when it's a really windy day, we've already kind of said, we know there's blowdown that happens occasionally along Tickle Creek, and kind of messages go up on Facebook or whatever, hey, it's, you know, windy day, we've had a tree blow down on, you know, it's not unheard of to, you know, to have that happen, to kind of put out a warning. So, you know, my understanding of our level of management responsibility is to kind of identify known hazards. You know, if we know a tree is likely, you know, there's imminent hazards. I can show you a picture of an imminent hazard that we probably need to take down. It is number 403 are the last ones. Yeah, that one. That's leaning up against that tree. It's, you know, it's huge, but it just needs to be pushed down. And it can still operate as a, you know, as a nurse log, and it's right along the creek. It can be, you know, large woody debris in the creek, so there's still a huge amount of benefit it can provide us. But as it is now, there's nothing really holding it up. It's leaning up against a log, and we need to kind of get it taken care of. It could easily be pulled down with some, you know, you don't have to even get a big piece of equipment in there. It can be pulled down with cables. So.
And this is a tall tree. It's tall enough that if it fell over, it would hurt something.
Yes.
Is that 403 and 408?
Yeah, 403, yeah.
Yeah, 403 and 408. It's a huge old cedar that's just rotted out, and it's over past Bridge 3, but before Bridge 4. By the bench there, kind of somewhere, you know, there's a bench as you're heading from Fred Meyer's going east, it's on your left. The bench is on the left and somewhere in there, as I recall. So anyway, that's an example of an imminent hazard. That could
take that one down, they took the other one.
So, you know, so So that's an example where that's an imminent hazard that probably needs to come down right now, so, as soon as possible. So, in the short term, what you wanna do is, if you can't take it down, you should at least, flag it, sign it, things like that. So that's an imminent hazard. Then there's other trees where, where you do have some, like, let me show you another one. Okay, so I'm gonna see 637. That's a tree where, and I don't know if that tree was dead when they cut it down, it might have been. Or, let's see, let's go to 146. 146. I don't think 146 was dead at the time. And it's right near the little crib stuff, the little interpretive log, notch stump. So tree number 146 obviously had some rot in there, but it also had holding in wood. And from what I can tell, again, if you looked at the standards, it had plenty of holding wood, that it wasn't a hazard. Now, but you did, it did have some issues. And so when you board it, you would have seen that, and that's what you document. And so you say, okay, it's a cedar, it's this big, it's got, here's how much holding wood it had at this time, and you monitor it, and you tag it. You say, this is tree number 146, and it's a cedar, it's this diameter, it's how much holding wood we had. It's still within the standards for keeping it, but you monitor it. And then when you start seeing that there's more butt rot or some other issue with it, the crown is flagging or some other indicators, then you would go ahead and make a call to take it down. If it fell down before that, you had, at least you were monitoring it. You have a record, you have rationale for why you didn't take it down. Because, you can't tell, from even just from boring a tree exactly what's going on all the time or in all places. So as you can see.
So you're talking about what the Forest Service does in campgrounds.
It's barely.
Does our maintenance people do this along Tickle Creek Trail?
They contract it all out to these arborists. And so that's where I think it would be helpful to have a plan in place, some sort of a hazard tree. And I would expect that this plan would be different for the parks, because again, in a city park where we're watching movies and all that, those are stationary targets.
Right.
So then the standard becomes a little bit different. You still have trees, you go up in these campgrounds and stuff, you still have trees that you're gonna monitor, because they're not, you can't say they're a hazard yet, but
Right.
you need to have a record that you're monitoring them. And I believe they do have some monitored trees, or they used to. I just remember seeing some tags in Mining Park at one time or another. But I don't know where the records are and stuff. So it's really important to have records, because then, if you don't have records, you're in big trouble from a liability standpoint. And they do. I think they do. They contract this out. But I think it's helpful to kind of just have some guidelines, because I don't understand exactly what the guidelines they're operating under are when I see
And
these.
when you say they, it's parks or public works or what?
I don't know if there's any guidelines from parks maintenance folks, or whether the arborists themselves, or they have a certified American arborist or something. They have some standards for themselves.
Who contracts it out?
The city
The city,
contracts it
meaning
out.
The Public Works Department?
Yeah, the city parks maintenance department contracts
Contracts it out.
with, and actually they do it for other places, the natural places too. So I guess my point is, I think it'd be helpful to have some standards adopted somewhere that just kind of clarify what our response is. For example, if there's a natural area and there's a dead tree out there and there's no target
Right.
around, in my opinion, and but
Yeah.
certainly other people might have different opinions, I recognize that, I wouldn't think that we need to go out there and take that down. Now, if it's gonna fall on somebody's house, then that's a different story. So that's where that target thing, even if it's in a natural open space, if there's a target nearby, then your response is different. But if there's no
A
target.
place to start, I would think, is that if we're contracting this stuff out, what are the standards that the contractors use?
Yeah, I think they use some sort of, again,
But it would be nice
arborist,
to know
national
what it is.
arborist, yeah. What
But
are
we
they?
could start with that, and maybe
Right,
that's
yeah.
sufficient.
And how could they end
Yeah.
up with that happening.
Yeah, and then how do you take care of, you know, so how, and then what is the record keeping? So if we're using are we using the same arborist every time? Do we have a set of city records, for, you know, for trees to be monitored long-term? Things like that,
And
just,
then does the tree
yeah.
itself always stay there in the park in some capacity?
Not necessarily, but
Cause they sometimes, might they haul it off?
it might.
oh, you can you can decide what to do with it, yeah, depends, so.
Sometimes you need a tree stump, trunk, whatever, someplace else. If you have an erosion problem over in another park, you have a hazardous tree in this park, you can.
Stumps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then as you saw with when we had that, you know, with the clear cut next to the trail, there, it was a huge blowdown, a mess, and we did haul some of that, you know, they hired somebody to take some of that stuff out because it was just like a pickup sticks, you know, huge. So, yeah, you know, but that should also be addressed is, you know, and we've done that too, is to try to leave large woody debris on, you know, in the campground or whatever.
Yeah.
But then the equally important part about all this is are we planting trees? When we take down these hazard trees, are we planting trees underneath it to replace them?
Mhm.
So because, you know, as we, you know, you can see when you walk down Tickle Creek, you know, it was once an intact forest, and even intact forests over time kind of transform into, you know, trees blow down, new trees get, you know, come up. But obviously you've got neighborhoods, you've got development encroaching on it, you have the trail itself, you have all this other stuff, and so over time, you know, it's kind of unraveling a little bit. You know, and of course, if you wanted to be 100% safe, you go in there and clear cut the whole thing, which is not what we want. And so then you kind of have to say, well, we're not going to be 100% safe. We're going to have some sort of acceptable level of risk that some of these trees, you know, have some issues, but we're going to monitor them. So I think that, you know, having the arborist, having Joe again, and having the arborist or a arborist come, having the Kristen Chadwick come, because she's very familiar with both arborist standards and federal standards, would be helpful to just kind of talk to us about, you know, I mean, I'm just kind of this deep on it, you know, I know, I don't want to say I know it's dangerous, but, you know, I think having expertise from these folks as it applies to a park setting would be helpful. And I believe it would be, you know, if we were able to kind of develop some standards, again, you know, what we do in the parks area, that, you know, a developed park area versus a developed trail area versus a natural open space, we'll probably end up with 3 different kind of standards about that. So, something to consider. That's kind of what I thought would, you know, it's not anything that we have to do, you know, by next month, but in the next, you know, 6 months or so, I thought, you know, it'd be something that we could kind of tackle, because it's, yeah, it'd be helpful, I think.
Yeah, thank you, that sounds excellent.
And like I said, that reforestation is, you know, a key thing that, you know, I'll admit, we don't do that, a very good job of that in the Forest Service when we're taking down hazard trees in a campground, and, yeah, we need to kind of look at that. And it's such a fun thing to do, because, you know, Arbor Day, you go out there and plant trees on Tickle Creek Trail, I mean, gosh, you know, that's a fun thing to do, so it's all white hat.
Yeah.
You see like goofy kids' pictures.
I've been doing your vacation photo.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've noticed, you know, that what little I do walk on the Tickle Creek Trail, that a lot of side, the trees are made for side edges and various things.
Yeah.
You know, you see them, and that looks nice, I mean, that's great to have them stay there,
Yeah.
right?
So-
You even put across the creek, so the kids have more bridges to walk on.
Yeah, well, another issue that we're having with Tickle Creek is just the increasing number of user trails.
Yeah.
And some of that is from the painted rocks that people
Are
like
they
to go
still
look
doing
for.
that?
Oh, yeah.
We haven't posted any signs that said Painted Rock people need to stay on the trails, right? There is nothing, no message about that. Is there? I know there's groups that are all excited about it, but we haven't tried just saying that it's bad for the woods or anything
Oh, we've tried.
educational.
Trust me.
No,
Yeah.
there's nothing posted out there.
That's true.
Well, so what have we tried?
why kind of
I
put
know
some.
you brought it up once,
I posted
and
it
you
a
got,
couple times,
you
yeah.
know, smacked around a little by the
Yeah.
mothers that were there.
Yeah.
But other than that, what
I
have
mean,
you
this is like
tried?
people doing, you know, like 70 at a time. It's not like a,
They're painting rocks and
How do you
like,
know
oh yeah,
this?
I did 70 today, you know, like, oh, you know,
Running
more
all
and
over
more,
the
and then they
place.
go out there and hide them. And I think, you know, like when I went, I just went a week ago or so walking on there, and there was a lot of them along the trail that I saw, that, yeah, that were visible along the trail, and that, you know, was less disturbing. But the challenge with that is that kids, or, you know, whoever's out looking for, which is I think generally kids, they don't necessarily just look along the trail, they tend to kind
Yeah.
of go off the trail. And so, and my concern is that once, as they do that, you know, you're seeing more and more of these kind of it only takes like a very few number of people to go off a trail before the vegetation, you know, the oxalis and things like that are trampled, and it doesn't come back. So it's just that repeated use, yeah, so that's something to.
But what about education about it?
we do.
About the result? We don't do that anymore. How can we do it?
I think that's something to address in the Parks Master Plan, to some extent. Education is a big, you know, how to protect parks. And
You don't think we need to put things out in the park?
I think that,
You think
I
that would
think,
just
you know, I
stir
think
up
what we've
people?
talked
I
about in
think
the past.
sometimes that challenges people.
But not just to say, you know, don't do this, but to just say when, you know, 10 people walk on a plant,
Right.
it's gone for good. Kind of something, it could be a lot less confrontational,
Right.
just more, you know.
Informational.
Informational.
And I talked about doing, and
Don't you think
I
that would
will admit,
help some people?
I mentioned that I could do it and then never did it, so I apologize. I fell down on that, was doing some sort of like a scavenger hunt type thing where they don't need to go off the trail, like, you know, find the biggest leaf along the trail, or, you know, do you see a, you know, woodpecker hole, and, you know, show pictures, things that, and then as part of that, incorporate an educational message about going off trail, you know, why do we have trees falling down, you know, so there's some educational components you can include in kind of that scavenger hunt type activity out there. So, yeah,
That would be great.
I would love to do that and just put it on my list.
Just modify that city
Do
bingo
that
thing.
in
and make it
2021 or something, right?
So, yeah, I think long-term, we should do that.
Huh.
Okay, so that's hazard tree cutting. Have any other thoughts on that? On the,
Well,
It would be interesting to find out what the process of, you know, how they make those determinations. And I'm curious as to why they did cut it so many different heights.
yeah.
it makes it real
I mean,
obvious.
there has to be a reason why
Yeah.
they, unless, you know, the one where they just drive a pickup through there and stand in the back of their truck and cut it, or what the heck were they thinking on that one that, I mean,
Yeah. Every time I walk it, I'm just kind of go, I don't know. So, anyway, yeah, I think, and I'm just, like I said, I see more and more, you know, stumps
Yeah.
every year as I walk it, and I'm just getting a little concerned.
yeah.
So, you know, having some sort of a clarity of, you know, how much is happening when we do it there is important. But it's also important in all the parks, I think, you know. Just clarified, you know, because there's a lot of old trees in Mining Park that, you know, are they being monitored, you know, a lot of old cedars and all that, so just having that documented.
Can I ask, how do you drill those bore holes without injuring the tree?
So what we do is we, you know, first of all, the bore thing is about the size of a straw,
Yeah.
and you, it's just like a drill bit, only a hollow drill bit, and so you just drill it in. You also, you know, or you can do the old hand ones, and those,
Exactly.
you know.
But
you
you
know,
go
so-
right into the core of the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
And you
then
pull it
once, and
all
then you
out.
take it out, and you know, and, well, you put it in, and then there's like this little thing that goes down the straw that's got, it's like a little, it's like a long stick, it's like half of a straw. And so then you stick that in there and pull it out, and that has the,
Core.
core.
Mhm.
And so then you can kind of see how much is rotten and how much is holding
Mhm.
wood and all that. And then what you usually do is, just stick a little piece of wood to
put a
Seal it
little-
back up,
But you
yeah.
don't put the stuff back in, you take it off to
You
your
can,
lab and look
you
at it
can,
or whatever.
or, you know, you
Huh.
can stick it back in, or you can, stick a, you know, piece of, you know, take a little chunk of it and just plug the hole. It's, yeah,
Hmm.
so.
Huh.
But yeah, some of those big old growth ones, you know, trying to turn that thing, cause you have to, you know, it's,
Hmm.
and then, you know, then it can kinda get stuck and, you know, cause it's, you know, it's good
But you wouldn't
upper
put some
chest.
kind of glue in there or anything to gum up anything,
You
it
know,
can
there's
build it
usually
itself.
some pitch that's coming,
Yeah.
you know, that helps the whole process, so.
Hmm.
But yeah, sometimes we would just do, well, and some, you know, even with a drill, you can kind of see, you know, sometimes if we're in a hurry or whatever, not, you know, and we're just monitoring something, you can kind of, as you drill into a tree, and you can use a finer drill, you can see, you can feel when it goes from good holding wood to nothing. You know, it's like when you're, you know, going in a wall, you know, oh, I hit a stud, oh, no, you know, sort of like that, so. Okay, off task, let's see. Old business, any roles and responsibilities? Everybody had a chance to look at those? Looks like they,
And I mainly just wanted to be sure I caught all the changes that you had recommended, from our last meeting. I went through the minutes and, what's old business not online?
In the bylaws, in Article 3, second paragraph,
Okay.
I thought we had said that we were gonna say the board should ideally include at least one member with various interests.
Okay, Article 3, second paragraph, should ideally include.
shall ideally.
It says shall, but we decided that shall ideally is kind of contradictory.
Oh,
Because
okay.
Shall ideally
have
equals
to,
should.
and ideally mean,
Okay.
it's
so
ideal, so I
should.
thought we said we were gonna do should.
Okay, I missed that.
Yeah.
I will change that.
Okay.
Oh, that's not good, that's you, so.
It's the last page.
Okay.
The whole
last-
packet.
I don't know why for some reason it's not showing up in my. Anything else? for
So
the-
that's the bylaws, anything on the
Yeah,
roles
that's
and
the bylaws.
responsibilities?
I didn't have anything on roles and responsibilities, but I might have missed something.
Now, it'll be interesting to see what the city council thinks.
I think they helped to develop this. I mean, they're
I don't
Rich
think
Dev
they-
person.
I don't, well, I think Carrie did a lot of it, I don't think they've, I
Oh,
don't
they
know
haven't
that
seen it?
they've
Oh, okay.
seen,
All right.
they've seen it.
Okay. No, I guess we will.
Okay, so I'll
Okay.
make those changes.
Any other changes?
No.
Great, let's go on to staff updates. Order and cooperative procurement program.
Okay, so I just wanna let you know, I did send that information to Tyler, and he is gonna look into it. So I forwarded the website, which has a lot of great information, by the way. And he's gonna start looking into it and see if we can, if it makes sense for us. So I'll keep you posted as I get any information back from him.
Let me ask a question. And this is kind of done. So that boring station gazebo that we looked at, you recall that?
Mhm.
If we had the plans for that, could we, because it's Clackamas County, could we just request from that contractor?
We piggyback on their
Yeah.
bid process?
Yeah,
Only if there's an intergovernmental agreement between us and the Clackamas County that allows that. So what we're referring to on the Oregon Cooperative Procurement Program, basically that's what it is. It's an
so
agreement.
that's with the state,
It's with the
right?
state, but it also extends beyond it. If you read the the website, it'll tell you that it's partners with the state of Washington also.
Right, okay.
As far as going directly with the county, I don't think we can directly because we're not a subdivision of the county. For instance, North Clackamas Park and Rec District probably could because they're a service district of Clackamas County.
Okay, right, yeah.
But
Excuse me.
City of Milwaukee or Lake Oswego or Sandy, all cities within the county, probably cannot.
Did you say it extends to Washington as well?
On the Oregon Cooperative Procurement Program, it does, yeah. And maybe even other states too, it depends, it's a whole network. It's-
So would Clackamas County had to have purchased that through that state, or once they do
They
that,
could've-
does it go to this, does it
No.
get put on there?
No, not
Like,
necessarily.
it's not an umbrella thing where?
No, not
Okay,
necessarily.
all right.
If it's a state contract, then yes, I believe it
Yeah.
is an umbrella thing. But not, it can come down, but it can't go up.
Okay, that's what I was asking,
Yeah.
yeah, good.
So,
Okay.
I guess that's the best way to
Yeah,
explain it.
yeah. So regarding that, because the reason this came up was for the gazebo stuff, you know, getting the package that they used for that gazebo
Mm-hmm.
would be a good place to start.
Are you talking specifically for Bornstedt?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wasn't, well, correct me if I'm wrong, I was under the impression that Kelly had already gone out for a bid for,
Yeah, it hasn't gone out yet, but the RFP is almost done and it's going
Okay.
out very soon.
okay.
But having that set of plans would get you much more accurate bids than, you know.
Right, but the set of plans may not be available, that might be proprietary. So
It
it might,
sounded like Rick from Clackamas County was willing to.
was he? I don't know, I didn't talk,
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
To give it to him. I'll forward you that message. I'll forward it to Kelly again and make that suggestion.
Right, and Kelly may have done
Yeah.
that too. He may have put a set of plans into it.
Yeah.
No,
Well, so that's kind of my concern, is that we're gonna get, you know,
a lot of apples and oranges.
like apples, oranges, and limousine, like, you know, Lamborghini.
A lot of work's been done, I think, per your suggestion at the last meeting to dial that down. And including the
Yeah.
surface area, we spoke with Public Works and.
Yeah, but even just having those set of plans, you know, it's, you know, if you're trying to bid on a house and, you know, somebody might tell you, well, I want a, you know, a 1,200 square foot house and I want it to be made out of cedar and all that, you know, whereas having a set of plans, the accuracy or the cost efficiency of your bids is gonna be a whole lot different with just like an RFP, which is kind of more, you know, when you're doing a master plan or something like that, an RFP is appropriate. When you're actually building a structure, a set of plans is usually, you know, what most contractors want, because they wanna know, you know, unless it's design build, then you kind of give them the more general stuff. But, I don't,
Well,
but
and
you're
that set
gonna
of-
pay for design build.
Right, and that set of plans may not have been applicable to our application either. For instance, you know, I think it's gonna extend the length of 3 picnic tables or, you know, whatever, maybe, I don't know if that
Mhm.
shelter necessarily accomplished that.
Yeah, right.
I know that there was an option for over by the dog park, I thought, to have a semi-rounded one or shaped one.
Currently in the RFP, we're asking for that, but I think we generally feel that's gonna be outside of our budget, but we thought it'd still be worth
Sure, an
getting
option.
an idea.
Right,
And that is sort of a unique build, the one in the dog park, because
Yeah.
it's going over that tiered seating, so it's not a
Right.
standard.
but I guess my point is if, you know, if you're gonna put plans in it, you gotta make sure that they're accurate to what you really want.
Right, yeah, that's true.
Right,
Here's my concern is that, especially when we're going out in the middle of summer, the price is going to go out the roof. And, cause all the contractors are already way far busy, and so what they do here, just like happened in Mining Park, is they throw, you know, quadruple the price of what it should cost at you, and if they get it, then they're gonna bump off one of their existing customers to try to, you know, string you along, you know, and so, I just, you know, I mean, I know we wanna do this, but getting the most cost-efficient price for it takes some more work up front, I guess, so. But,
Yeah, and I think some of that work's been done since the last meeting. We've done RFPs, and Mike's given us some more detail on the surface.
And at some point, I'm not sure where our role ends and staff role begins, you know, as far as we can rely on them and their expertise to put together those RFPs. That's really not our job as laid out in anything
I
here.
know, but I'm just sitting here, we had $275,000 grant for Mining Park.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what happened, you know, the reason we didn't, you know, we're having kind of some of the same situations where, when we're not as specific, when we go out in the middle of summer for a bid, you know, some of those same things that crashed that whole project and made us have to give back $275,000 a year after they gave it to us, more than a year after they gave it to us, so it kind of hurt our chances for getting future grants. I want us to be successful, and I know,
Sure.
I know what that takes, and so I'm just gonna continue to provide suggestions and advice that way. It's up to the staff to do it, but, you know, as the staff rotates, you know, we've got James involved in it, Kelly involved in it, Sarah's involved in it, Tommy's involved, you know, it's hard to, with so many people working so hard, each one of them, but with so many people, it's hard for one person to kind of see the whole picture and go from there. So we'll just see how much that bid comes in at for one or two gazebos?
Sorry, what?
Two.
2 gazebos, yeah.
Well, it's not a gazebo as much at the dog park, because it's just,
But even the ones at, I mean,
Wormstead.
Wormstead.
Yeah, it's, I don't know if we're calling it a full gazebo, but,
Shade structure.
okay. Yeah, that,
I mean, it's, so hopefully we're successful there. What's the update on the RFP Master Plan?
Okay, so, and you can fill me in here, this is from what I understand talking today, is that the bids are in, and the committee, and Dawn and Kathleen are both on the committee for the Master Plan RFP, are meeting Monday to at least start that process. So that's exciting, and the Master Plan, you know, kind of kicks off here shortly, and they'll be looking at those bids and making a recommendation. And hopefully we'll have somebody contracted really soon, and we can start the process, and hoping that it can be completed within 18 months or sooner, so we can start to really see some of that come to fruition. So I'm sure it's exciting for all of us to see that.
Do you think they'll decide before the next meeting?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We should have our work done before the next meeting as far as a recommendation for who to hire. Whether that's negotiated and contract signed or not, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's only 4 of them. It's really not that hard.
Interesting, wasn't it, the big discrepancy?
Yeah, there's an outlier.
Yeah.
Oh.
Kathleen, I think you
Would you like to get
It's
more
not-
action?
yeah, I'm okay, I'm on that.
No, you just never know.
Okay, National Day Out.
Okay, so got an email from the chief, and they are kind of last minute this year, but they want to do it going forward. National Night Out is a community sort of policing event to do some outreach in the community. So they're going to be doing that on August 6th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. At Sandy Bluff, Barlow Ridge, and Tupper Park. And it'll be probably minimal this year, but I reached out to Ernie and said it'd be really great to collaborate next year, because it's another opportunity for us to be out in the parks and talking to people, for recreation to be out there, talking about programs. So just want to let you know about it. It's going to be happening in those parks, and I think they hope to do it every year, so maybe we'll continue to build on it and offer some other activities.
Can you get them copies of our parks maps to hand out to people?
Yes.
Great.
Let me put that in these
I
notes.
always think that's it's a great opportunity to.
So that's a daytime event in the middle of the week, and the police are in the parks, is that what that is?
They're gonna be in the parks, it'll be, I think, promoted, and people can come out and meet the police, the staff, and ask questions, and they're probably gonna have some fun activities, and
But it's
just,
on a Tuesday.
what's
Right.
the 6th, August 6th, is that a Tuesday?
Huh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. then
Okay,
yes.
so it's.
And do we know the time?
6:30 to 8:30 PM,
Okay,
it's
so
in
it's
the
evening.
Sandy Bluff,
Oh, evening.
Barlow Ridge, and Tupper.
So is it just kind of visibility for the police to have, to talk about?
Safety and do some outreach in the community and, build relationships.
Sure.
Want to just catch up
Mhm,
here?
sure.
Okay. And then, are there any other questions about that? Okay. I think it sounds kind of like a neat event. Garden repairs, I just wanted to follow up, there are some, at the community garden, some of the beds that, need some repair, and so we're gonna do get some, brackets and some things and go out there and do a little bit of repairs, and then Joe will be looking at it, a little more seriously in the fall, but there's a couple beds that may not make it quite that long, so we are aware of that, and we're gonna do that, and I do like the idea of having more volunteers, working out there, cause it is just, not possible to keep up on it if the gardeners themselves aren't out there more. I know Susan, you're out there a lot.
No, not necessarily, I've been really busy,
Yeah. Yeah.
But I get there, pick my peas, it's been a great summer for peas.
Yeah, I know.
But.
Well, bless your pea-picking little heart.
Yeah, we need a little more sun, don't we, to get the,
Yeah.
it looks like stuff, the last time I was out there certainly was a lot growing.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to follow up, because I know it's been brought up a couple times, that we're aware of it, and we have short-term plan and a long-term.
Yeah, that's.
And then I see a poster, Dog's Day
Oh,
out.
yeah, I didn't have this on the agenda, but, so this is the event that has raised the money that hopefully will allow us to build that shade structure in the dog park. It's coming up again in September.
Is this a Corn Cross event also?
Yes, it's the same event that we've done at Corn Cross every year.
So we're doing Corn Cross. I didn't know.
Yes, just September, probably not November. So at the September Corn Cross event, we do this Dog's Day Out, and it's a really fun day. People bring their dogs, come out to the farm, but, we've been able to raise close to $20,000 to support improvements at the dog park. So I just wanted you to see, this is a draft poster, but you'll start hopefully seeing these around town. And if you're a dog person, come out and enjoy the day out there at Leopold Farms, and lots of fun stuff going on. Yeah. That's pretty much all I had. Anything else from you?
I want to, I'm curious how the evening event went. I'm sorry I wasn't able to.
I know, Longest Day Parkway.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I felt like, given the sort of iffy weather, that it was well attended. Maybe not as well attended as last year, but it did seem to me like we had a steady stream of people. It's a really fun event, see the kids out there on their bikes and scooters and all kinds of different activities going on. So it was good, it was a good event.
I want to apologize for not being there.
Oh, well,
Saturday
I
night, but
appreciate that.
We had
I was a
a
little
new
late.
family member join us.
That's right, that was so exciting.
Yeah.
New baby in the
The family. Yeah.
Don's family. And my reminder was very late, my apologies, so I hope I didn't catch anybody off guard there, maybe everybody just had other stuff going on. But going forward, the Parks Trails Board is certainly welcome to join us at our booth at that event for whatever promotions we'd like to do or outreach we'd like to do.
I like your poster.
What, is this at this weekend?
No, this was
Oh,
the
this was
Longest
the-
Day
yeah,
Parkway
Longest Day, right.
in June.
Did you have a good
It's
turnout?
become a pretty established event, and people
Yeah.
look forward to it,
Right.
and so I think it's a very good opportunity for
Yeah.
the board to do some outreach. Not the only one, but it's a good one.
I want to go. Conflicts.
Nice, good job.
I need to work on this a little bit.
Who did
more.
that, flyer, that's nice, who did that nice colorful
Oh,
flyer?
I did that.
Oh, you did,
Okay, so any other things? So you're gonna send out the applications that you've got, just so that we
Yes, I'll
can
do
s-
that, and I think I will also call everybody too, and
Yeah.
just, make sure they're still interested, let them know when the next meeting is.
Uh-huh.
Because that is part of the process that they come to a meeting, so
Right.
I will reach out again. Summer's tough, I think, for
It
a lot
is,
of
yeah.
people, so, but it's nice to know there's a good level of interest right now, 4 to 5 people.
Yeah.
And,
One of the things that's helpful on the application is, is there, like, we said, we kind of like representation from the
Mhm.
different areas, and is there an opportunity on the application for them to kind of,
yeah.
I think there
document
is,
that? Is
I'm
there-
not, maybe not pointedly, but if I remember correctly, because it's been
you
a
were
couple,
probably
few
the most
weeks.
recent
Sort of
to
about
fill it
areas
out,
of
yeah.
interest.
Yeah,
or-
Yeah.
there was a little areas of interest kind of thing, or
Okay.
what special skills might
Yeah.
you bring to it, or
Right.
whatever.
And, it might even, if you're looking at, even editing it, just putting a couple of those squares, check mark boxes of the areas,
Yeah, I'll find out who
Trail,
did that
you know.
application and see
Yeah.
if we can,
And then were you able to kind of get it posted in the different places on the website? I haven't looked for it yet.
yeah, so maybe I can, let's see, so what we did, we actually created a parks page, and let me use my computer and pull it up, so now when you go to, Kathleen, I'll just talk you through it here when I get to it. This is my password for absolutely everything, so record it. Yeah, I can get into my email, all of my different Starbucks account. Okay, let's see. So I believe what we do now is if you go to About Sandy, let me take that back. You go to Departments, go to Parks Information, which I have this by some crazy Parks Information. You should see all of what used to be on multiple pages now in one page. So general questions, directory, maintenance, events and activities, planning, Parks and Trails Advisory Board, and there's a click here to apply.
Look they have, click the following link to review these Arborist reports 2014 to present. I'll have to look at those.
Yeah, so David did just try to kind of put it all in one place. So you weren't having to skip around and try to find information. Did you lose it?
No,
Oh.
it's just that I don't know how to make it.
I know, I don't love that touch screen either, so.
Well, what's the
honestly.
secret to make it like go somewhere? Love that little page up thing, page up. It doesn't do anything. Not the whole
I think
thing.
that's gonna be easier to find,
Okay.
but let me know if you have
And
any
would the,
feedback
like
for
the
that.
garden rental thing be in there too, sort of?
Well, I could put a link there,
Yeah.
yeah.
Huh.
Oh, I have no idea. Take a quick trail.
What is that a picture of? I don't recognize that thing. What is that background building? Is that something that I've never been to?
The garden is pretty booked, we only have, I think, 2 beds at this point that weren't
Yeah, 2 beds.
rented.
Right.
Only 2 or 3.
So what's gonna happen to them?
You know.
They'll just sit there, yeah.
Yeah, it just, the parks maintenance crew doesn't have time to go out there
No.
yet, you know. But I know that there was one gentleman who went out and did quite a bit of work on the beds that hadn't been rented yet,
Yeah.
and now a couple of them have been rented,
Yeah.
cause they looked beautiful.
Yeah,
It's ready for
right.
planting.
Right.
So,
And the soil pile is still there, the last one.
the dirt,
Yeah.
yeah. I know, so
So-
note to note, I think we ordered maybe a little more than we needed to this year. Last year it wasn't quite enough, this year it was maybe a little more than we needed, but not everybody filled their beds all the way up to the top
No,
either,
right,
which they could have.
I actually hauled some over to one of the beds that was not
Oh,
rented, just to cut a top.
Oh, that was nice.
I don't know if it'll make somebody
maybe somebody
get interested in it.
Never know, because once the sun comes out again, people might decide, okay,
Yeah,
we'll
right.
plant. And they're good,
Yeah.
it's a year-long rental, so if they're into planting garlic or
Yeah.
things like that, they can
Right.
still plant.
Yeah, so, okay.
Anything else?
I'm tired. I wanna go home.
Okay.
Yep, all right, thanks, guys.
Thank you
This,
for all your help.
meeting adjourned.
That's very educational.
Yeah.
Fun stuff, huh?